Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the security think tank Henry Jackson Society. Alan, how are you?
Hello, thanks, Nicky.
One of the most shocking files revealed was a video from a US military helicopter showing civilians and 2 Reuters journalists being shot dead in Iraq. A lot of stuff like that has come out. We should be celebrating this man, shouldn't we?
No, we shouldn't. Let's go back to the realities of what's happening. We have someone accused of a crime who is trying and has tried for 13 years. By the way, of course, he's been accused of multiple crimes. Your previous guest mentioned he'd been deprived of his liberty for 13 years. Well, the reason he was deprived of his liberty for 13 years was because he was hiding in the Ecuadorian embassy to escape a rape charge in Sweden. Nothing to do with this case at all. So we've got complicated charges that were laid against him at various times. He's done his best to avoid facing a court trial on those issues. And it's really very simple. When someone's accused of a crime, they need to go and address that and deal with it in court. And if they're innocent, they'll be found not guilty and released. And that's really what this case is about. And what today's issue is him trying to avoid facing trial for a crime he says he didn't commit. But again, the customary way to deal with that is not to pretend that there's no way you can go to face the trial because it's a disaster, but to go to face the trial and win it.
Rebecca, do come back on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The Sweden accusations are still one of the misconceptions in the case, actually. It has nothing to do with what is happening this week. There is no open investigation against him in Sweden. Assange has denied wrongdoing, and there have been a lot of reports examining what actually happened, including quite credible reporting by the former UN Special Rapporteur on Torture. It's complicated, but it's not the case that he's evading justice in Sweden. But again, that has nothing to do with this legal case. This legal case is about the publication by WikiLeaks in 2010 of leaked classified information that exposed war crimes and human rights violations. These stories were in the public interest. We have the right to know. The problem as well with this is that if he is sent to the US, we've already talked about the precedent that could set for journalism and for press freedom, but also we don't believe that he can get a fair trial there. First of all, the fact that there's no public interest defense under the Espionage Act means that anybody accused in this way can't get a fair trial. But the US government has also stated that because Assange is not a US citizen, he will not be afforded First Amendment protections. So how can anybody get a fair trial in those circumstances? There is no business that any democratic country, including the UK, has in extraditing somebody in these circumstances. It would be a real tragedy of justice.
Alan.
Well, firstly, let's not get her to twist the facts again. She's being mendacious. She knows full well that the Swedish accusations were dropped because they were time limited because he spent so much time hiding in the embassy. So the idea that somehow he's been exonerated by that is nonsense. He's got a track record of avoiding trial for his actions, and he's trying once again to avoid trial for his actions. Many of our courts have multiple times said there's no problem with the US justice system in this regard, whatever she's just said there. The Americans are given lots of guarantees that he doesn't face the swinging penalties that she claims he's facing. This is just one massive PR campaign for one man who has potentially committed crimes to avoid facing trial for those potential crimes. This is all this is about. And our courts have repeatedly ruled it. The European Court of Human Rights, I think, has already thrown a case out. He'll try again to lodge one if he loses in London again. There are no legal grounds, though, thus far, that the British justice system has seen to avoid him facing trial. So again, what you've just heard is simply not true.
A prime example of the misconceptions that are intentionally perpetuated in this case.
No,
It's ill-informed and outdated.
The misconceptions
This case,
are yours
it is not,
because
it is
you're
not
making
just,
up things. You're making things up.
That is frankly offensive. My organization and many human rights and freedom of expression organizations. I'm
Alan,
sorry,
I'll come back to you.
I'm going to respond if I am defamed on air. My organization and many human rights organizations, free expression organizations, many journalists and media outlets, many governments and policymakers around the world have found that this case is about journalism, it is about press freedom, it is about human rights. So, we can bury our heads in the sand and pretend that it's not, but that is frankly just fantastical. What is at stake here is all of our right to know and the rights of journalists around the world to do their jobs. It is not just about one man.
Well, let's just look at it very simply. If you're saying the British justice system is somehow at fault here as well, and is somehow not aware of this, I think that's a ridiculous situation. We've got a very good system of justice here in the UK. These points have been made ad nauseum to the courts. They haven't agreed so far. if they now agree today that this case has to be thrown out, well, I'll be the first to say British justice has said this case needs to be thrown out and that's it. But if they don't, I expect him fully to be extradited and to face trial as before. And again, it's for the British justice system to ascertain whether what's just been told to you on air is correct or not.
Actually, that's legally not what's happening this week. What's happening is Assange's final application to appeal the extradition order. If any grounds are accepted this week, there could be further hearings in the UK. If all of his grounds are rejected, then he still has recourse at the European Court of Human Rights. And I believe firmly that he will receive justice in Strasbourg, if not in this country. I would like to believe in our justice system here in the UK, and I sincerely hope that British justice will deliver some form of justice at this late stage. But the truth is that this is a political case. Our systems in the US and the UK are not meant to have political prisoners, but that is what is happening. This man is sitting in a prison in Belmarsh, in Woolwich, just outside of London here, while this circus is ongoing. It's been
Who's pulling the strings? If he's a political prisoner,
the US government. It's the US government with the UK enabling it.
Ah, yes, the old deep state argument. This is what it's all about.
I did not use those terms. I did not use the term deep state, and that is offensive as well. The U.S. government is the one behind this case. It is a Department of Justice case. It is being heard in a UK court because what is at stake is his possible extradition to the U.S. It is absurd to claim that it's not a U.S. government case. That's a fact. It's a fact.
It is a US
so I don't even understand.
Let's not just forget it's the multiple US governments who have pursued this case. The Obama government, the Trump government, now the Biden government. No, it was
not the Obama government. This indictment was brought by the Trump administration. Obama never pursued him.
Let me ask you this, Alan. I mean, I've dealt with you and interviewed you and talked to you over the years, and maybe I'm surprised that you are not an avid supporter of, I put to you as the devil's barrister here, of freedom of speech, freedom to know, freedom of information, defending the right of somebody to do this, even if you really do not agree with what they're doing. What happened to you?
Well, it's not what happened to me, Nikki. It's what happened in this case, which is there was allegedly a conspiracy to hack into government computers to release these files. And we say that this is a journalism case. Well, it's not really a journalism case. Julian Assange was never a journalist. He didn't ever claim to be a journalist. He was a campaigner in different ways. And it's not as if this was done by a newspaper or recognised news outlet to go there. This was done, the original activity was done for political purposes. Your other guest speaks of there being a political crime having occurred here. Well, if that is the case, it's a political crime that Mr. Assange himself gladly participated in. And that's the point of it. So if you feel it's a politicisation, it started not from a news outlet from going out there doing this, but from a conspiracy allegedly that took place to do it, and where one person has already served time for their part in having conducted the hacking.
Alan, come back on some of the stuff we heard so forcefully and articulately expressed that by Mushtaq.
Well, look, I think on this I'll agree. The case he was alluding to, of course, of the hit-and-run driver, he's absolutely right. We really should have been stronger on that and insisted that there was a trial. But two wrongs don't make a right here. The idea that someone commits a crime somewhere else and then can hide in this country is clearly not viable. Because think of all the people who would then rush to commit crimes in other countries and stay in the UK and go, well, we can't possibly be extradited. So on a general level, that's just not correct. He also cited, of course, things like...
He hasn't committed a crime here.
Well, yeah, but if someone committed a murder, for example, in the USA, they wouldn't be committing a crime here, would they?
But he hasn't committed a crime here, has he?
Yeah, but neither would someone who's committed a murder in another country. Neither have they committed a crime
here. But that's not the point. He hasn't committed a crime in the US and come here.
But your argument... Well, he has, because he's committed a conspiracy to hacking, according to US authorities. No, if that's a crime, what he's being tried upon is not some random crime that occurred somewhere else. It's an accusation that he has participated in a conspiracy to hack the US government. How can you say that is not a crime?
He did not hack the US government. Someone else did. Bradley Manning or Chelsea Manning,
yes,
who then became Chelsea Manning.
That's the charges.
So we're now into conspiracies, are we?
No. This is a legal charge. I don't think you're following I don't think you're following the legal charges.
It's very easy to follow any member from the Henry Jackson Society Sunshine.
Okay, well, this is just silly. If you're just going to throw personal attacks and not engage with the material in front of you, this is not really a very sensible way.
Let's take the Henry Jackson Society out of it, who, they have their fans, they have their critics. That's irrelevant. Let's look at the issue. Alan.
So the issue is, again, just on a legal sense, the term conspiracy, a legal term in this case, that he conspired with Chelsea Manning to hack the US government. That's clearly a crime in the US, which is why they've asked to extradite him. There's also, of course, the question of having published the informant's names. Again, I noted the previous guest suggested that not one shred of evidence has been presented that anyone has died. But surely that's going to come up in the trial itself. In that way, it's not going to be revealed now because, again, some of this is classified national security level. If you don't want to start showing informants who were knocked off, as it were, because their names were published. So the reality.
But hang on. We saw a US military helicopter showing civilians and 2 Reuters journalists being shot dead in Iraq, thanks to Julian Assange. Thanks to WikiLeaks. But you're talking about people dying. That's what we saw.
I'm talking about the informants.
Did that need to be exposed? Is it right that was exposed, Alan?
Some lives don't matter to Henry Jackson Society and people like him.
Well, let's take the Henry Jackson Society out of this.
Well, this is a silly attack. Look, the point is, again, it's down to the methodology of how this occurred and who did it. It's not a journalist. It's not an attack on liberty. The US has repeatedly stressed multiple times this is not about information itself being released. It is about the particular way this information was released, number one. Number two, also the danger it put in informants who were helping the US in Afghanistan in danger of their lives because their names were leaked. That is the crux of this. And I will agree with your previous speaker on one issue, which is she feels confident that, she hopes justice will be done. Well, so do I. I think we should let justice take its course, let the courts hear the arguments, whether it's in the US, whether it is in the UK, whether it is at the ECHR, and for those judges to come to their own conclusions about how this case should proceed.
OK, listen, one more for you, and we're going to go to our correspondent Nikki Schiller outside the High Court. Now, let me just ask you to get in touch with us on this. You've heard some interesting stuff so far. 08085 909 693. And send us a text. I'll come to those texts soon. 85058. Alan, Peter Hitchens, no fan of Assange, a man that most people would place on the right of the spectrum. He wrote recently, even a self-respecting poodle would object to the way we're currently behaving towards the US on this.
Well, I mean, Peter Hitchens is never known to throw, to sort of pull his punches on any discussion. He may well think that, but the reality is that we have an extradition charge in from an ally, from a justice system that we think is acceptable to be extradited to, and we're hearing that debate. I don't really see why that would be a case of us acting as a poodle, just as we would be accused of acting as a poodle for any other extradition, request that comes in from any other ally with a reputable justice system. This is simply justice taking its course. Justice needs to take its course, needs to be concluded. And again, if Peter is saying that the British justice system is also a poodle of the Americans, I think that's a very, very tall order.